Well, good morning, good afternoon, depends on where you're at. But this is our second blog. We're excited to come to you and share with you just a few things where God's taken us. And I would like to start out today's blog with a scripture that's going to lead into our message. I'm going to go to Philippians 4:4, and this is the ESV version. It says, in 4, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. What comes to mind when you think of that, man?
Well, Kelvin, we were talking earlier just about the importance of peace in decision making. We all face decisions, whether that's getting clarity on a vision and direction for our life or just everyday decisions. And the importance of following your peace on the inside is so important. So we talked about, I had an example where I had a gym business for a long time, personal training gym business. And it was time we were needing to move our gym business. And there was lots of different options of where we could move to, but I didn't have peace about any of them. And it got all the way down to we only had 2 days left to figure out where we're going before we had to be out of our old place. We didn't have anywhere to go. But I was following peace. And one of the challenging things about that is I was getting a lot of pressure outside of me from other people to make a decision. And so to follow peace, let that peace guard your heart. To follow peace in your decision making, number one, it's going to take some courage because there's going to be some pressure to, what's the Bible say? There's going to be pressure to conform to the patterns of this world, to do things the world's way. There's going to be some pressure to do that. And so it's going to take some courage to follow your peace. As you were saying earlier too, Kelvin, that, a lot of times that peace is just that very small, still voice. It's not loud. You might get a lot of other noise that's trying to convince you to do other things. But anyways, I followed my peace and we ended up moving to a location that I just knew that I knew God was saying this is the right place to go. And it ended up being a case where actually didn't have any payments to make. And little did I know that just a couple months right after that, COVID hit. And we were in the right place at the right time because I followed peace. If I had followed the pressure from outside, we would have been in a really hard spot, I think. We would have been in a tough spot, but I followed the peace, and it was not easy to do in the moment. It was challenging to do in the moment because of the pressure. But I followed the peace, and it put us in the right spot at the right time. It ended up being a tremendous blessing in so many ways. And so I think God is trying to lead us in that way a lot of times. I know, Kelvin, you had an example just with your retirement. I don't know if you want to go into any of that right now, but
Yes, Dan. Uh, like we were talking about, sometimes the still small voice is the smallest voice in your head. It's the one that's just kind of whispering its way out amongst all the other loud mouths in my head, so to
yeah.
speak. But yeah, I try to listen and add peace and see, okay, when I test this thought out, what am I feeling? What's happening? Well, just recently, I mean, August 1st, I will reach a year anniversary since I retired from a job. I was blessed to be able to run a major dining service at a university, and I just remember I really liked what I did. I knew God had called me to be there, and I was one of the people that I just loved pouring into my team and growing them and working with them. And so this decision didn't come lightly, but there were a few things happening around campus, and I started getting the nudge that it was time. So after prayer and supplication, literally, God gave me a date that, hey, this is it. And so 1 year out, I give my notice. I actually give him a year's notice. And I did have a job that it was going to take a little while to find somebody and to do the interviews. And then with the 40 years I'd been at the university, I was going to have to do a lot of training. And so there were a lot of things I wanted to make sure were done right. But at the end of the day, when I made that decision and turned that notice in, I'll never forget how much peace I had about it. I felt joy. And then over that year, not one time did that ever change. It did not change whatsoever. And so for me, walking that year out was just a godsend. I was able to pour into my replacement. I was able to accomplish as much as I could on my way out and leave the place well. And at the end of the day, I just wanted them to tell me, well done, good and faithful servant. And when
Yeah.
they threw a retirement party for me, I was really blessed because that's what I heard. I heard that, hey, thank you. And so it was time for me to move. Well, then this gentleman over here, Dan, stepped into my life at a very much higher rate than we were before. And we started a life coaching business. And literally, since I've left work, I have just been thriving in my retirement. I mean, I don't think about my previous job because I left it well. I left it well. I don't think about those things in the past. I'm thinking about here I am in my retirement, thinking of all the things God is blessing me with. And so I'm living for the now and into the future, and I'm still walking out what God's purpose is in my life.
Yeah.
And it was a real blessing that when Dan came and we started talking, and then we formed this business of being life coaches, just trying to help people walk out their purpose and how they serve God at the highest purpose possible. So that when we all leave here, in this lifetime and we finish, we want that same acknowledgement. Good, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
And so it's been exciting to see where God's been taking us.
Very exciting. When I think of, you got that piece in the decision making. We talked a little bit earlier about also, there's a place in your decision making where you do your research, you do your due diligence, you count the cost, as Jesus says.
Mhm.
I think, there's a place for that. And you gotta, know the decision that you're going to make, but ultimately you got to pay attention to your piece. Like everything might look great on paper, but you don't, like in my case, it could have all looked great on paper, but I didn't know COVID was coming a couple months later.
Mhm.
God did, but I didn't. And so ultimately you want to do your due diligence and your research, but ultimately you got to pay attention to your piece because he knows, the end from the beginning, and he can
But
lead you in the right path.
yeah, man, I remember because I was working out at your gym at that time, and I remember from a somebody that was a client that I was like really concerned for you,
Mhm.
because you're down to 2 days and you don't know where you're going. And it just seemed, from somebody on the outside looking in, it just seemed so just crazy that here you got this mammoth amount of equipment to move in a very short period of time. But I think what people listening, what I remember too, watching it from how you made your decisions, and you were spot on. I mean, you were trusting God every step of the way, no matter what it looked like, and following peace. But if you hadn't, there's a high probability you might have gone bankrupt and lost everything
Hmm.
just because COVID shut everything down. Nobody was going to the gym.
Yeah.
And to take on a new mortgage or a new rental agreement and all these kind of things, and then just to see where God put you in a place where you didn't have that
Yeah.
and you were able to thrive.
Yeah.
And it was that still small voice. So it was impactful to me watching how all that turned out.
Yeah. But it's funny, the one question I remember getting from people over and over, from clients, from my own employees or trainers at the gym, from my wife, from everybody. The question was, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And it seemed like that was just on re, repeat all the time. What are you going to do? I was like, and my answer was just, I don't actually know, but I know God knows. I know He's got something. I have peace that He's got something, and that was a lot of pressure.
Mhm.
That was, an immense amount of pressure. I don't know if you ever get into those spots where sometimes it feels like it's almost hard to pray. You don't know what to pray. It's like, what do I do? I'm just trusting at this point.
Mhm.
That was actually during that time, we talk a lot about these days about going for walks with God.
Mhm.
Just getting outside, go for a walk with God. That's actually where that idea came out of that time because I didn't know what else to do. It's like I'm gonna go for a walk with God. And since that time, it's been a regular thing that I do pretty much every day. Just take 10, 20, maybe even longer some days, 10, 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, go for a walk with God. And obviously, great thing to do for your health, but also just a great way to connect with God too. But
Yeah. Maybe one thing I want to kind of close with today, and this has been something I think is plays into a lot of decision makings, and that's fear.
hmm
And I describe the acronym of fear as false evidence appearing real. And I can just remember I was, as a client, fearful for you
hmm
because it was coming down to the wire. So I just couldn't even imagine the pressure you were under. But yet, to see how you gracefully allowed God to do the work up until the last minute. But yeah, God had it all worked out. And here's another thing Dan didn't share, but you would not believe all the people that showed up with moving equipment, their bodies to help. And we had Dan, how long did it take us to move you? It was in record time.
we moved an entire gym out of one place and was completely set up to be ready to open for business at the new place in one day.
And that's a lot of equipment. That was a lot of work.
It was a
But
lot of work.
God worked out all the bodies. And
Hmm.
and I mean even showed up with moving equipment.
Yep.
I mean some of your clients had like a moving company. So it was just God had it all under control.
Hmm.
Excuse me. But how many of us, including myself, would have been going, God, there's only 3 days left.
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
and here we would be questioning God out of fear instead of
Hmm.
out of that peace. And God shown up in the peace.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to, that was where I wanted to end our little conversation today. You got anything else, Dan?
No, I think if people would like to learn more about that story, that all comes from it's all in my book called The Miracle Year, God's Blueprint for Breakthrough. And then Kelvin and I sometime soon. I don't have the exact date with me right this second, but sometime soon coming up. We're going to be teaching a Foundations of the Abundant Life Blueprint class coming up. Some of these lessons are some of the types of things we're going to be talking about in there of just, how do you walk out God's plan for your life? How do you get clear on what He's called you to do? How do you walk that out in such a way that it's a blessing to you, a blessing to the people around you, not only now, but hopefully for generations to come as well. You'd like to learn more about that class or the book, you can go to abundantlifetrainingcenter.com and you can find more information about it there. But it's been fun.
Yes, it is.
Yep. All right, Kelvin. I guess we'll see everybody on our next version here.
We'll be back Tuesday with another blog.
Sounds
Number
good.
3. We're
Yep.
excited. Thank
All
you
right.
for watching what we had to say.
Yep.